China has increased the size of its economy 40 times since 1980. 40 times. It's now a bigger economy than the United States. It's a much bigger industrial power. It is technologically more advanced than the United States in most sectors. So China made it, and that's why we're at the end of yet another cycle. The European imperial age is over. The British imperial age ended in 1945, and the U.S. imperial age is ending right. And then Trump said, okay, we're going to restrict any advanced chips going to you. And China said, okay, no rare earth magnets. And the U.S. within a half an hour said, we surrender.
大家好，今天这期视频给大家带来的是著名经济学家杰弗里·萨克斯围绕中国崛起、中美竞争以及美国全球霸权展开的一场演讲。这些年，美国似乎一直在想办法给中国踩刹车，从科技封锁到供应链限制，再到不断升级的贸易战，美国千方百计地试图遏制中国的发展。可问题是，中国真的被遏制住了吗？恰恰相反，中国的发展速度似乎越来越快，而美国也因此变得越来越焦虑。更有意思的是，萨克斯教授指出，当美国试图通过贸易战给中国施压时，却突然发现自己同样离不开中国庞大的工业体系和关键供应链。那么，美国究竟为什么如此害怕中国崛起？是因为中国真的正在威胁美国，还是因为中国正在动摇美国长期以来的全球主导地位？更值得思考的是，如果一个国家已经强大到无法通过封锁和制裁轻易阻止，那么美国接下来还能拿什么来遏制中国？美国如此着急焦虑，是否恰恰证明了中国已经走到了一个新的位置？这场中美博弈到底是谁在遏制谁？而美国曾经牢不可破的霸权，又是否正在悄然发生变化？让我们一起听听萨克斯教授的解读。
Because the United States is in a deeply neurotic funk. You know what the cause of that neurosis is? China. A wonderful, brilliant civilization, 4,000 years old plus. It's been a unified state with brilliant statecraft for more than 2,000 years. Unlike Europe, in which every country of Europe fought every other country of Europe every year for 1,000 years. Most of the time, China was peaceful, united. It fragmented temporarily at some points, but it was mainly a unified country that actually, strangely enough, didn't beat up its neighbors also. So China, for 1,000 years, never attacked Japan, for example. Can you imagine? Britain couldn't keep its hands off any place for more than a year or two at a time. It had to go beat up somebody. And the United States doesn't even take a year off. I don't know the truth yet. It could be an accident, but I don't think so. Today, a major refinery in Venezuela suddenly exploded. That seems a lot like the CIA to me. I don't guarantee it. We don't have any more news. But last week, President Trump said he had assigned the CIA to operations inside Venezuela, and a week later, suddenly the biggest refinery blows up. So the United States can hardly go a week at a time without trying to kill somebody. But China actually goes centuries without attacking its neighbors. So China went for 1,000 years without once invading Japan, a near neighbor, even though China was much more powerful. Incidentally, from 2 times There was an attempt to invade Japan from the Chinese mainland, but that was when China had been conquered by the Mongols. So 800 years ago, roughly, they tried twice. The Mongols tried to invade Japan, and they were defeated both times. But the Chinese never tried. The Japanese actually, sadly, invaded China many times, but never the other way around. And the Chinese never invaded Korea. And the Chinese did invade Vietnam once, but that was 615 years ago. And then they had a skirmish for 1 month in 1979. Other than that, that's the so-called enemy of the United States. So that's why I call it a neurosis. China's the least threat possible. Doesn't threaten anybody. Doesn't attack anybody. Hasn't been in any war for 46 years. And the war that it was in 46 years ago lasted 1 month. That's when Vietnam toppled a government in Cambodia that China viewed as an ally, and so it punished Vietnam for a month for having overthrown their ally in Cambodia. Other than that, no wars for more than 4 decades. But we're in a funk because the American idea is you have to be number one so you can boss everyone else around. And by the way, we learned every trick we know from the British, who did that for 200 years before that. So that's where the geopolitics comes in. 1991, the Soviet Union had an economic collapse, and it collapsed into 15 successor states. And I mention this because at that moment, the United States said, oh my God, now we made it. We're alone. We run the world. And believe me, that's how they felt. And that was an illusion, a delusion. They thought Russia, that's a nothing. And they thought China, don't they grow rice there? That's an impoverished country of villages. We don't even have to worry about that. We are the sole superpower of the world. Well, that's not how economics works, actually, because Adam Smith's insight is completely right, which is that if you are fortunate to have open trade, peace, and good economic policies, you get a lot of catching up by the transmission of knowledge, technology, and the opportunities for rapid advance. So while the United States wasn't watching, and I know they weren't watching because they're not very clever there in Washington, I have to tell you, and they don't understand much of economics at all. They weren't paying attention, but China was growing at 10% per year, thank you. And if you do that, you double the size of your economy every 7 years. And if you do that for 35 years, which China did, you've doubled 5 times. And doubling 5 times means you've grown 32 times. And if you continue beyond that, China has increased the size of its economy 40 times since 1980. 40 times. It's now a bigger economy than the United States. It's a much bigger industrial power. It is technologically more advanced than the United States in most sectors, not all, but in most sectors right now. When you drive your vehicles 10 years from now, they will be Chinese electric vehicles. And even if you happen to drive a Tesla, that's a Chinese vehicle, by the way, with Elon Musk at the top. But it's the gigafactory in Shanghai that gives it even a chance to compete. So China made it, and that's why we're at the end of yet another cycle. The European imperial age is over. The British imperial age ended in 1945, and the US imperial age is ending right now. And the world is not fragmenting. The US is isolating itself. It doesn't even go to the parties anymore. It puts on tariffs. It says, you can't have our market. And the rest of the world says, okay, because your market's not so important for us. And Trump said, okay, we're going to punish you, China, for being so successful, by the way. We're going to put 100% tariff on you. And the next hour, China said, okay, we're putting 120% tariff on you. And then Trump said, okay, we're going to restrict any advanced chips going to you. And China said, okay, no rare earth magnets. And the US, within a half an hour, said, we surrender. By the way, I had no idea there was anything called a rare earth magnet before all of this happened. So I had to ask ChatGPT what it was exactly. It turns out it's absolutely essential for all manufacturing, for automotive, for military, and so on. And China makes them. The US doesn't make them. And so turned out the US learned a bit of a lesson there. Again, yet another reason why Donald Trump is staying home. So this is why we're at such a historic juncture. But the world is really not fragmenting. It's remaining open and it's trading. It's just that one corner of the world is very surly. The part that used to dominate just can't figure out what's going on. And Trump is, of course, trying to flex the military muscles in a disgusting way.
看到这里，我们或许可以重新思考一个问题：美国为什么如此焦虑中国的崛起？如果中国真的只是一个可以通过关税、科技封锁和供应链限制就轻易遏制的竞争对手，那么美国又为什么需要付出如此大的代价，不断升级对华限制？而如果这些措施不仅没有让中国停下脚步，反而促使中国加快自主创新，完善产业链，那么美国过去的这些战略究竟是在限制中国，还是在迫使中国变得更加独立？萨克斯认为，中国的发展已经让美国无法再像过去一样轻松维持全球主导地位，而中美贸易战背后真正较量的也不仅仅是关税和商品，而是产业链、科技实力以及未来世界秩序的话语权。尤其值得关注的是，当美国试图利用自身优势对中国施压时，中国也并非没有反制手段。稀土、制造业和庞大的供应链体系，让这场博弈远比表面上的关税数字更加复杂。美国可以限制中国购买先进芯片，也可以提高关税，切断部分供应链。但问题在于，中国究竟还有多少美国无法轻易替代的筹码？而这场竞争真正值得关注的，也许并不是某一次贸易谈判谁占了上风，而是双方的实力差距究竟会如何变化。如果中国继续保持这样的发展速度，美国过去建立起来的全球产业、科技和金融优势还能维持多久？反过来说，如果美国能够重新整合盟友，推动技术突破，它是否依然有能力改变这场竞争的走向？但这也留下了一个更大的问题：中国的崛起究竟意味着美国霸权的衰落，还是仅仅意味着世界进入了一个新的竞争阶段？美国还能不能通过科技封锁、贸易战和供应链限制阻止中国继续发展？中国未来会不会真正成为能够与美国长期抗衡的世界强国？而如果美国无法阻止中国崛起，未来的世界究竟会变成中美两强竞争，还是走向一个更加多极化的时代？如果美国继续把中国视为最大的竞争对手，中美之间的竞争会不会进一步升级？而如果双方最终都意识到，没有任何一个国家能够永远垄断全球经济和科技优势，那么未来的国际秩序 又会不会出现一种完全不同的可能？中国崛起究竟是对美国霸权的挑战，还是全球力量重新平衡的必然结果？美国的焦虑到底来自中国的威胁，还是来自自身主导地位正在被削弱的现实？这些问题可能比简单判断谁赢谁输更加值得思考。那么你怎么看？你认为美国还能遏制中国的崛起吗？中美贸易战最终谁会成为真正的赢家？中国的崛起会不会真的改变美国主导了几十年的世界秩序？如果你是美国决策者，你会继续选择遏制中国，还是尝试与中国合作？欢迎把你的观点留在评论区。